Cammy finally did the one thing she swore she would never do. She went to Tommy and asked for help. Yeah, that Tommy, the same man she fired without blinking. The same man she tried to replace with his best friend 5 minutes later. The same man she told, very clearly, that MTEX didn't need him anymore. And now she's standing at his door with nothing left. But here's the real problem. Tommy doesn't need Cammy anymore. Not her company, not her authority, not her permission, because while Cammy was busy proving she could run MTEX alone, Tommy was busy building something bigger, something faster, something stronger, and by the time Cammy finally realized the mistake she made, it may already be too late. Let's be honest for a second. When Cammy fired Tommy at the end of season 2, she thought she was making a power move. You could see it in the way she did it. Calm voice, cold expression, no hesitation, like she had already decided the future of MTEX didn't include him, and maybe in her mind, that made sense. Tommy had always been Monty's guy, the loyal lieutenant, the fixer, the man who handled the ugly side of the oil business so Monty could keep his hands clean. But Monty was gone, and Cammy wanted the world to know that she wasn't just the widow keeping the seed warm. She wanted to run the company her way, her rules, her leadership, her decisions, and if that meant pushing Tommy out of the picture, well, so be it. But here's the thing about decisions like that. They don't just disappear after you make them. They come back, sometimes quietly, sometimes slowly, and sometimes they come back like a freight train moving straight toward you while you're still standing on the tracks, because the moment Tommy walked out of MTEX, something shifted in the entire power structure of that industry, and Cammy didn't see it. Not right away. She thought she still had control. She still had the company. She still had the contracts. She still had the name Monty built. But what she didn't have anymore was the man who actually knew how to hold all of that together. Tommy wasn't just another executive sitting in a corner office. He was the one who understood the dangerous people behind the deals. The one who knew which wells were worth fighting for and which ones were traps waiting to collapse. The one who could walk into a room full of oil men who didn't respect Cammy and make them listen anyway. He was the engine, and Cammy, she just turned it off. Now imagine being the people watching this happen from the outside, people like Galeno, because Galeno isn't the type of man who ignores opportunity when it suddenly appears right in front of him. He watches, he waits, and when someone makes a mistake big enough, he moves. So when Tommy walked into that meeting with Galeno, he didn't walk in as a man looking for sympathy. He walked in with a plan, a real plan, not an idea, not a dream, a full blueprint for a company that could compete with MTEX from day one. Think about that for a moment. Cammy fired him expecting Tommy to disappear. Instead, he walked straight into a room with one of the most powerful investors in the industry and walked out with $44 million. $44 million, that's not a second chance. That's a declaration of war. And suddenly the balance of power changed overnight. Tommy had the funding, Tommy had the experience, Tommy had the relationships that Cammy thought belonged to MTEX, and one by one, those relationships started following him. Cooper stepped in beside him. Nate stayed loyal. The team began forming around Tommy like iron filings around a magnet. Meanwhile, back at MTEX, things started getting quiet, too quiet. Contracts got harder to secure. Investors started asking uncomfortable questions. And the one man who used to walk into dangerous negotiations and come out with a deal was now sitting on the other side of the table. But even then, Cammy still believed she could fix it, because pride has a funny way of convincing you that you're still in control long after control is already gone. She doubled down. She pushed forward. She told everyone MTEX didn't need Tommy, and maybe she even believed it, right up until the moment those documents appeared, the ones Monty hid, the ones with no electronic record, the ones that suddenly made Cammy realize something very uncomfortable. Monty had secrets, big ones, secrets dangerous enough that he didn't trust anyone with them. Not the board, not the company, not even Cammy, and the deeper she looked into those papers, the more one terrifying possibility started forming in her mind. What if Monty didn't just hide information? What if he hid something that could destroy MTEX completely? Because if that's true, then Cammy isn't just fighting a business rival anymore. She's fighting something much bigger, something Monty himself was afraid of, and suddenly the one person who might understand how to deal with that kind of problem is the same man she threw out of the company, which brings us back to the moment that might define Season 3, Cammy standing in front of Tommy, the woman who fired him, the woman who humiliated him, now asking for help. But here's the question nobody can stop thinking about. After everything she did, why would Tommy help her at all? Because here's the part of this situation that makes it so complicated and honestly a little uncomfortable to watch. Tommy isn't a simple character. If he were, this decision would be easy. Cammy fired him. Cammy disrespected him. Cammy tried to replace him with his own best friend. End of story. A man with a normal amount of pride would close the door in her face and move on without even thinking twice. And for a moment, it really does feel like that's exactly what Tommy might do, because look at where he is now. 6 months ago, he was cleaning up MTEX's messes, protecting Cammy from decisions she didn't fully understand, and carrying the weight of Monty's entire operation on his back. Now he's sitting at the center of something new. It isn't just a startup. It's a fully operational company that came together almost overnight, and that alone tells you something about Tommy that Cammy clearly underestimated. People follow him, not because they're forced to, not because they're paid to, but because they trust him. Cooper is there, Nate is there, Dale is there, the crew is there. Even Rebecca stepped in to handle the legal side of things. That kind of loyalty doesn't happen by accident. It happens because for years Tommy proved something to the people around him that Cammy never fully understood. Respect in this industry isn't given to titles, it's given to the person who can solve problems when everything starts falling apart, and Tommy has been that person for decades, which is exactly why Galeno wrote that $44 million check without blinking. But let's not pretend Galeno is doing this out of kindness. Galeno isn't a mentor. He isn't a partner. He's an investor with a very specific expectation, results, and that's where things start getting dangerous, because money like that doesn't come with patience. Galeno expects growth. He expects profits. He expects Tommy to build something powerful enough to justify that investment. And if that doesn't happen, well, the kind of men who invest $44 million into oil operations don't usually handle disappointment quietly. Tommy knows that. You could see it in the way he listened to Galeno in that final meeting, calm on the surface, but paying attention to every word, because when a man like Galeno smiles while making a threat, it means he's already thinking 3 moves ahead, which means Tommy is now balancing 2 completely different pressures at the same time. On one side, he has the opportunity of a lifetime, his own company, his own leadership, his son Cooper stepping into the role of president and finally proving himself in a world that has always been brutal to newcomers. On the other side, he has the weight of Galeno's expectations sitting on his shoulders like a ticking clock. Every deal matters now, every contract matters, every decision could either move forward or create the kind of mistake that investors like Galeno don't forgive. And that's exactly why Cammy showing up now couldn't come at a worse time, because helping her wouldn't just be emotional. It would be risky. Imagine how that looks from Galeno's perspective. You invest millions into a brand new company designed to compete with MTEX, and suddenly the man you're backing is spending time helping the very company he's supposed to be replacing. That doesn't look like loyalty. That looks like hesitation, and hesitation is something investors absolutely hate. So when Cammy stands there asking for help, Tommy isn't just thinking about their past, He's thinking about his future, his company, his team, his son, because Cooper being part of this changes everything. If this were just Tommy alone, maybe the decision would be easier. Maybe he could afford to follow his instincts, but now his choices affect an entire company full of people who believed in him enough to walk away from MTEX and start something new. That kind of responsibility changes a man, and yet, there's still something about Cammy's situation that refuses to go away. Those documents, the ones Monty hid, the ones with no electronic record, because the more Tommy hears about them, the more one uncomfortable truth starts creeping into the back of his mind. Monty wasn't careless. Monty didn't hide things without a reason. If he went through the trouble of keeping those papers completely off the digital grid, then whatever is inside them must be serious enough to protect, or serious enough to bury. And if Cammy is scared enough to come ask for Tommy's help, then the situation might be far worse than anyone realizes, which leads to a possibility that changes everything. What if those documents don't just threaten MTEX? What if they threaten everyone connected to it, including Tommy? Because if Monty was involved in something dangerous before he died, then the fallout from that secret might not care which company someone works for now. Secrets like that have a way of spreading, and suddenly the question Tommy has to ask himself becomes a lot more complicated than simple revenge. If he refuses to help Cammy, he might be protecting his pride. But if he ignores what those documents could mean, he might be walking straight into a disaster he doesn't even see coming yet. And that's the moment where this story stops being about business and starts becoming something much more dangerous. Because the deeper Cammy digs into Monty's past, the more it begins to look like Monty wasn't just building an oil empire. He might have been hiding something big enough to destroy it. And if that's true, then Cammy knocking on Tommy's door may not just be an act of desperation. It might be the only warning he's going to get, which raises a terrifying possibility. What exactly did Monty leave behind in those documents? And why does it feel like the truth could bring down far more than just MTEX? Now, here's where the situation starts getting really uncomfortable for Cammy, because while she's trying to figure out Monty's secrets, the rest of the industry is already moving on without her. And in the oil business, that might be the worst position you can possibly be in. Momentum is everything. If people believe you're winning, they want to work with you. They want to invest. They want to attach themselves to whatever success they think is coming next. But the moment that confidence cracks, the moment people start whispering that maybe you don't have control anymore, things change fast. Very fast. And right now, if we're being honest, MTEX looks like a company that just lost its backbone. Because Tommy leaving didn't just create a vacancy, it created a question. Who's actually running things now? Cammy might technically be in charge, but authority in this industry doesn't come from a title printed on a business card. It comes from reputation. It comes from the kind of quiet fear people feel when they sit across the table from you in a negotiation. Monty had that. Tommy definitely has that. Cammy, well, that's still something the industry hasn't fully decided yet. And that uncertainty is exactly the kind of weakness competitors love to exploit. Because while Cammy is busy dealing with hidden documents and internal problems, Tommy is doing the exact opposite. He's expanding. Every meeting he walks into now carries a completely different energy. Before, he was Monty's right hand. Now he's the man building his own empire. And that changes how people treat him. It changes how people listen when he speaks. Investors who used to hesitate suddenly want to hear his proposals. Operators who are loyal to MTEX start quietly asking if there's room for them at. And that's the part Cammy never predicted. She thought Tommy would struggle after leaving. She thought he would need time to rebuild connections, time to create something new. Instead, he moved faster than anyone expected, almost like he had been preparing for this moment longer than anyone realized. And if that's true, then firing him might not have just been a mistake. it might have been the exact opportunity Tommy needed, because now he's not carrying MTEX on his shoulders anymore. He's building something that belongs entirely to him, and the people around him can feel it. Cooper especially. This is the first time we're seeing Cooper step into real authority. President of the company. The face of the meetings where men twice his age are watching carefully to see if he slips up. And let's be honest, they're waiting for it. Because the oil business is brutal to young leadership. If you don't command respect immediately, people test you. They push boundaries. They look for weaknesses. And Cooper, being Tommy's son, makes that target even bigger. Some people will assume he's only in that position because of his father. Others will assume he's too inexperienced to handle the pressure. But here's what they might be forgetting. Cooper has spent his entire life watching how this world works, watching Tommy negotiate, watching him deal with dangerous situations that most executives would run away from. That kind of education doesn't show up on our resume, but it changes the way a person thinks. Still, experience is one thing, responsibility is another. And now Cooper isn't just observing anymore. He's making decisions that affect the future of an entire company, which means if someone wants to hurt Tommy, going after Cooper might be the easiest way to do it. And that's a terrifying possibility when you remember who Tommy is now. In business with Galeno, because men like Galeno don't just operate in boardrooms, they operate in shadows. Threats don't always arrive as contracts and negotiations. Sometimes they arrive as pressure, the kind of pressure that forces people into impossible decisions. And if starts succeeding too quickly, if Tommy begins pulling contracts away from MTEX, if the industry starts shifting toward his company faster than expected, that success might attract the wrong kind of attention. Which brings us back to Cammy. Because while all of this growth is happening around Tommy, Cammy is facing the exact opposite reality. Isolation. The more she investigates Monty's hidden documents, the more she realizes something chilling. Monty wasn't just protecting information, he was protecting people. Names start appearing. Transactions that don't look like normal oil deals. Quiet payments moving through channels that MTEX's official records never mention. And suddenly, the question changes. This isn't just about business strategy anymore. This might be about something illegal. Or worse, something powerful people wanted to keep buried. And if that's the case, Cammy may have stepped into a situation far more dangerous than she ever imagined. Because the moment she starts asking questions about those documents, someone out there might notice. Someone who believed Monty took those secrets to the grave with him. Which means Cammy isn't just investigating the past. She might be waking up enemies who are perfectly happy leaving MTEX alone. Enemies who won't care whether Tommy works there anymore. Enemies who might decide the easiest solution is making sure those documents never see the light of day. And suddenly, the stakes become terrifyingly clear. Cammy isn't just asking Tommy for help because she's losing control of MTEX. She might be asking because she's realizing something much worse. Monty's secrets could destroy everything: the company, the industry, maybe even the people connected to it. Which means the real question heading into season 3 isn't just whether Tommy will help her. The real question is something far more dangerous. If the truth inside those documents comes out, who exactly is going to try to stop it? And this is the moment where everything starts circling back to the one decision Cammy wishes she could undo: firing Tommy, because when she did it, she believed she was removing a problem. She believed she was finally taking full control of MTEX, but now the control is starting to feel like a trap. The deeper she digs into Monty's documents, the clearer it becomes that Monty wasn't just running an oil company, he was managing a network, deals layered inside other deals, partnerships that were never meant to appear in official records, quiet agreements with people who operate far outside the normal boundaries of corporate business. And Monty understood something Cammy is only beginning to realize now: some of those relationships weren't optional, they were necessary to keep the wells running. necessary to keep competitors away, necessary to keep certain powerful people satisfied, which means when Monty died, something else disappeared with him, the one man who knew how to balance all of those invisible arrangements without letting them collapse, Tommy. For years, Tommy stood right beside Monty during those negotiations, watching, listening, learning exactly how dangerous some of those relationships really were. Cammy saw Tommy as the company's operations man, but Monty knew the truth. Tommy was the shield, the person who could walk into situations that would scare most executives and come out with the problem solved before it exploded. And the moment Cammy pushed him out, that shield disappeared. At first the consequences were subtle, a delayed contract here. An investor pulling back there, a few partners suddenly becoming harder to reach. But now the pattern is starting to become obvious. The protection Monty built around MTEX is fading, and the people who once respected that protection are starting to test how strong the company really is without it, which explains why Cammy is suddenly looking at Tommy very differently, not as the employee she fired, not as the man she thought she could replace, but as the one person who might actually understand what kind of danger she's standing in the middle of. Because while Cammy has been unraveling Monty's secrets, Tommy has been building something powerful enough to survive whatever storm might be coming. It is moving faster than anyone expected. New drilling opportunities, new investors quietly showing interest, the kind of growth that makes competitors nervous, and every move Tommy makes strengthens his position in the industry, which creates a strange and uncomfortable reality. The man Cammy fired is now stronger than the company she tried to protect. But even with all that success, Tommy isn't blind. He sees the cracks forming in MTEX. He hears the rumors spreading through the industry. And when Cammy finally approaches him with those documents,